Welcome to Pure Hustle Podcast. I'm Mike.
And this is Orlando, and we're here for our first Monday. No, not our first. Our second Monday minisode of the year.
I don't know if we had one the last Monday. I think this is our first Monday.
Really?
Yeah. I think we went a Monday without an episode, but either way, it's a new year. It is 2022. And, many of you are longtime listeners of our podcast, or you follow our YouTube and you watch all of our shorts and all the things that we do. But some of you guys might be new and you're kind of just like, hey, it's 2022. I want to do something new. I want to start reselling. And so today we're going to be talking about 5 things that we sell on eBay, 5 things that sell really well on eBay. So if you're just trying to figure out where to get started, this isn't the end all be all, but this is 5 categories that we consistently do well in. And if you're just starting out or a longtime person and you need a new niche, these are categories that'll definitely help you out.
And there's a lot of things that played a part in what we chose. The ability to source it, the ability to ship it, the profit margins, how much is available out there, the competition. And so you gotta play this out because everybody has, their own geographic region, their own kind of stores, their own kind of businesses. So this is what has worked for us and we think would work for a lot of people. And for me, the number one category, if anybody asked me right away, Orlando, what should I be looking for to sell? I would always say shoes.
Yeah, shoes has been really good for us. I mean, when we first got started, I sold a lot of different things in the beginning, but I still have totes full of shoes. And one of the reasons shoes are so good. Now, if you're going to thrift stores, shoe prices have definitely gone up, but you can go to most garage sales and people put tons of shoes out there. And I remember when I first started reselling, I was like, shoes, really?
People look them over.
Yeah, people buy shoes, but it's a great category to sell because if you really only have to learn a handful of brands to do okay. Mm-hmm. There are obviously hundreds of brands where you can make great money, especially if you start getting into like the sneakerhead stuff. But if you just know, hey, I'm looking for Merrells or Merles, or I'm looking for,
cowboy boots
or Allen Edmonds. Like I've sold a lot of Allen Edmonds, right? So if there's just a few of them that you learn, Cole Haans, I was doing really well on for a while. The nice thing about picking them up at garage sales is you're paying like $1 to $2. You might bundle like 5 pairs of shoes together and, it's like $3 for all of it. You can buy them really inexpensive. And that's why this is one of the best things to sell because it's such a low barrier to entry. You're not worrying about, hey, I need to buy something that's going to cost me $60 and then I'm hoping I'm going to sell it for 100 or 150, which is great profit margin on just selling one thing. It's not bad. But if you're just starting out, it's like, oh, that's a lot of money to drop right in the beginning. Whereas shoes, if you pick up 20 pairs of shoes at $1 a piece or $2 a piece, you're only $20 to $40 in. And that first pair that sells for $40 to $50, it's like, cha-ching, I've broken even. And now the rest of them is pure profit. So even if they're selling for $20 a pop, which, you can easily net $20 a pair of shoes, as long as you're checking the soles, you're checking to make sure they're in pretty good condition. And it's a brand that sells. And that's the nice thing too, is shoes typically have model numbers on them. They've got sizes on them. So you can look up comps really easy to say, oh, no, this isn't good. And once you learn to like, what are the Walmart brands and those things, and you just avoid those, you're not spending a lot of time looking them over. You can quickly, yep, no, yep. And then there's a lot of categories in shoes. You could start learning, mountain biking shoes and road cycling shoes. And I've sold shoes, I paid $4 for at a thrift store, a pair of cycling shoes for like $120. So you can make a lot of money in shoes with a low barrier to entry, and they're easy to store and easy to ship.
Agreed. And again, there's various ways you can do this, right? If you want to go to a thrift store, you can find plenty there. If you want to go to an off-price store like a Ross or a Marshall or a TJ Maxx, sometimes there's great deals there. Sometimes you can make a local deal. There's just so much out there. Now, that does lead to more competition, but remember, there's also people that are looking for their certain size, right? And the thing with shoes, for the most part, you can toss them around. You're not too worried about how you're going to store them. Usually they keep to themselves and they're okay. And so I love the profit margin on shoes. Now, this is pretty vague. I say men's tops. And the reason I say men's tops is super vague is like Mike said earlier, if you know a few brands, like you're going to be okay, right? Harley Davidson is something that has been a consistent seller since I started reselling, right? And the market goes up and down, but it's still been profitable, right? I sell a lot of Hawaiian shirts. I sell a lot of sports jerseys. they're out there. And if you know, especially if you start getting into like the vintage, right? If you figure out what are some of the vintage brands, let's say for sports, right? Logo 7's good. Sports Specialties is good, right? Old Nike is good. All even new stuff, depending on, how much is available. And again, a lot of people sell electronics, right? And electronics, I think, are great, but we're talking about the easiest, right? The electronics, you got to test it. You deal with a lot of returns. You have to, package them. You have to make sure they arrive safely. With clothes, I sell, let's say, I sell a Harley Davidson shirt, right? Pretty easy, right? I just put in a poly mailer and I ship it. It's not going to get damaged, right? Unless it gets stuck in a conveyor belt. Super easy to store. And again, this episode is more towards those of you that are new at reselling going, I don't know what to look for. I don't know what's an easy way to get started. And I would say just because there's so much out there, whether you go to a thrift store, whether you go to an off-price store, whether you go to bins, garage sales, they're out there. And a lot of people look over some of this stuff at garage sales and so on. They go to estate sales, and at estate sales, they're going after the jewelry and they're going after, the collectibles and all that. No one goes into the closets, and there is so much money in those closets. So definitely check out. And the reason I say men's tops is I have a lot less returns on men's tops and other clothing items. And so that's why I think men's tops are good. What else do you think here?
Yeah, another good one is hats. Hats are another one that you can get very low barrier to entry. You can typically buy hats for under $1 to a few dollars each, depending on the hat you're trying to get, especially at garage sales and thrift stores. Again, some thrift stores, they get crazy prices, right? They want $5 to $10 for certain things. You're like, there's no way. But when you are looking for hats, if you look for old vintage snapback hats, you're going to do really well. I picked up one time for 50 cents a old Macintosh. It was like, I don't even think it said Apple. I think it just said Macintosh on it with like the Apple logo. And it was vintage and it was grimy and gross. I even washed it in the dishwasher with one of those hat racks because it was so bad and it still came out pretty bad. And I sold it for well over $100. And it was just crazy to think like I paid 50 cents for this item. And so right now I've been selling a lot of camel hats. I was at a garage sale and I picked up like 9 camel, like when you
mean like the cigarette hats?
Yeah, the cigarette.
Okay.
So like back in the day, you used to, if you smoked, you could send in your proof of purchase or whatever and get points, and then you could buy things in the store. So these were old like gifts that Camel would send people, and so they're old, they're vintage, they're snapback, and people who don't even smoke are buying them because there's just that nostalgia. Like my grandpa used to smoke and get these, hats and jackets and stuff. So people were buying them. And I'm selling these things for like $30 a pop, and I paid $1 each. And so it's really nice when you can find something that low. Sometimes military hats, old military hats, event hats, and old vintage, even uniform type hats. Like I know you've talked before about like Wiener Schnitzel, stuff like that, or AM PM. If it was like an old uniform someone wore,
I've sold like a UPS Blockbuster hat for like $100. And the thing with hats at garage sales, again, they get overlooked, and our YouTube isn't as big as others, and so it's still out there. By the way, if you haven't subscribed, make sure to subscribe. Smash that like button if you like what you're hearing. But you can buy a bunch of vintage hats. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've bought 30 to 50 for 25 cents, as Mike has said, 50 cents, and I just got to sell 2 or 3 of them, and I'm in the money. And they're easy to store, they're easy to ship. If they're a vintage hat, I usually use a 10 by 8 by 6 box or 8 by 8 by 8 box and put in a poly bag. But it's super light, usually first class shipping. And so that's why we love selling hats on eBay. All right. Now you had one that you explain yours.
Yeah. So I really like selling board games. And there's 2 different types of board games I sell. One are old vintage games. They sell for a lot of money. If you get the right games, if you get the right years, if you get the right models of something, they tend to do really well. The problem is certain games are hard to check if they're complete. So if it's like an old Monopoly or an old game that's got hundreds of pieces, I typically just ignore it unless there's crazy value in it and you can get it for really cheap. But if it's a game where it's relatively easy to check the pieces, like an old Stratego or an old Clue, where you can kind of just look through, count the cards, how many cards are supposed to be in there, count the number of pieces, and you're good to go. It doesn't take a lot to check. And a lot of times where you're going to be almost guaranteed to get complete games, I've only had like one time where I didn't have a complete game, is the newer kind of niche board games. If you go to like a Barnes & Noble or Target in the board game section, you'll see that there's like a new style of game that's out. Kind of Catan and Ticket to Ride are the gateway drug, as it were, into this type of board game. But if you go to boardgamegeek.com, and you can see that there are board games that new sell for well over $100, $150, $120. There's one game called Gloomhaven. It's like the game of games, and that sells for close to $200. And I get these at garage sales, and the Gloomhaven's a little bit trickier if it's been used, because it's like a legacy game. So you put stickers on the board as you're doing stuff. But these types of games, people spend a lot of money on, and they're not playing with their kids. It's not like Monopoly or something, or Trouble, where they just let their kids play with it. They're playing with a set of friends that come over and, once a week or once a month and play. So if you find these games and you can get them for $5-10, you could do really well. I got a Seven Wonders one time for like $3. It was complete, and sell it for $50 or $60, because a lot of these board games, especially the more niche you get, they typically do like limited runs on them. And unless it's like a game that ends up in Target, like you're probably not going to make a lot of money on Catan because it's in Target. But there's things like Kickstarter, where these games are being produced hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of new games every year. And they might only run, 5,000-10,000 copies, maybe less, depending on how well it did. So you pick up one of these, people aren't going to be able to get them unless they buy them used. So if you can get it at a decent price, check eBay. eBay's your friend. Board games aren't the easiest thing to ship because they can be awkward box sizes, but they're often, it's a niche market that not a lot of people are in.
And along with games, I wanted to talk about video games. Now, I know this mini, so it sounds like, all right, these are all obvious, Orlando and Mike. Like, why are you sharing these? And again, everybody has their different niches that they're selling, right? And so some of you might have been clothing sellers and you didn't think about board games, right? I still don't sell board games, but I do every once in a while if the profit is right. But if it's something that you're able to have a passion for and there's abundance of it, it's definitely something you should sell, because they do sell well. And video games right now are at an all-time high. And a lot of people are thinking, well, I can't find the new and sealed. I can't find any Nintendo anymore. It's more difficult than it's ever been before. But here's the thing. All video games across the board are selling. I just sold PlayStation 2, a Spider-Man game, probably because, the movie came out, right? I paid 50 cents and it sold $15 plus ship. But I've listed all my PlayStation 2 games. Anything. I buy controllers. Controllers are selling well. Like anything video game related that is, made by the brand, not the off market or third party stuff. There's some third party stuff like Game Genie and stuff like that sells, but the video game market is so hot, and I don't think it's going anywhere. I think it's only gonna, go up in value as more nostalgia plays a part, more things are getting graded. And since they're harder to find, right, when you do find them, you're gonna have profit. And again, it all depends on the certain game, but I'm finding all across. I shared this last year where I went to one garage sale and I bought 2 games for $2. I bought a Michael Jackson. I think it was Captain EO for Genesis, or maybe it was Moonwalker, one of the two, and a Ghostbusters game. And each of those one sold for 60 to 70 and the other one sold for 80. Right. So the Genesis games, I would have thought 5 years ago, people are paying maybe $5 on eBay for them. Now there's value in all kinds of games, right? And so I know this sounds like a gimme, but it really, really is an easy thing to, if you can find them, they're easy to ship, right? Easy to store, and nice profit margins. And so along with everything we talked about, from shoes to men's tops to hats to board games to video games, these are all the things right now that are doing real well on eBay that Mike and I are sourcing for this 2022. And with that being said, make sure to be real,
be relevant,
and be reselling. Late.
Peace.